Hello everyone. In the previous sessions, we had discussed about the concepts such as authority, delegation, responsibility, and the staffing process, and topics related to staffing process as well, the recruitment and selection process. So, in the today's session, we will start with the next management function, that is direction. As you know, planning and organizing are the basic management functions which deals with the preparation for the management. Now the direction is the one which puts the management into action, or you are going to do if someone is directing you for doing the particular job or particular activity. That's why direction puts everyone into action. So what is this direction? By definition, direction means issuance of orders and leading and motivating subordinates as they go about executing orders. So it deals with issuance of orders as well as leading and motivating the subordinates as they go on executing the orders. So from this definition we can derive two functions of direction. The first one is giving orders, second one is motivating and leading. Okay, the first function we can derive is giving orders, second one is motivating and leading. So here first let us know the nature of this direction, or the principles which need to be followed for effective directions, and then we will move on to these functions, that is giving orders and motivating and leading. Okay, so let me first go through requirements of effective direction, or you can say these requirements as principles as well. The first requirement is harmony of objectives. Second requirement we have is unity of command. The third one we have is direct supervision. Fourth one is efficient communication, and the fifth one is follow through. So these are the principles one has to follow so as to have effective direction. So first one is harmony of objectives. The harmony of objectives should be there between the organizational objectives and personal or individual objectives of the employee. When you give directions, the direction should be in line with organizational objectives as well as in line with the personal or individual objectives of the employee. Then only the employee will follow the directions, or he will take the direction seriously. Harmony means what? Harmony means the objective should be hand in hand. Okay. So the second one we have is unity of command. Unity of command, as we have already discussed this point, where there should be only one supervisor. There should be only one supervisor, because multiple supervisors are there on a single employee or single subordinate means he cannot follow all the orders or all the directions. So the work will be halted. That's why only one person should command the subordinates or employees. There should not be multiple persons commanding a single employee. That should be avoided. The third requirement of direction is direct supervision. Here the face-to-face suggestions are important. When you are directing a person, you have to be in face-to-face. Otherwise, the direction process will not be effective. Next one is efficient communication. The communication should be efficient, because the subordinate who is recipient of the directions, he has to be understood what is the direction or what are the orders given. Based on that, he has to do the activities. Here the efficient in both the sense. First one is the orders or directions should be clearly communicated. Should be clearly communicated, and there should be a feedback from the subordinate. That is, the manager or supervisor should hear the feedback from the subordinates as well. So there should be a democratic way of communication. That communication will be effective and it will be efficient in terms of direction. And the fifth one we have is follow through. It is not enough just you direct the subordinate and leave it. It is not possible in that way, because in direction you have to keep track of the progress of your orders, whether they are followed or not. That's why follow through is an important requirement for effective direction. So these are the requirements. Now let us move on to the first function of direction, that is giving orders. When it comes to giving orders, that is the function of direction, where the manager is going to use orders as a tool for directing his subordinates in starting an activity, or stopping an ongoing activity, or modify the activity as required. So in this way, the manager is going to use the ordering or giving orders as a tool in direction, so as to start an activity, stop it or modify it, and thereby he is going to have his goals achieved. Now let us go through the Mary Parker Follett's conditions for conditions to be followed in giving orders. The first condition is there should be an attitude development before you give the orders. Attitude development in the sense you have to develop the attitudes of employees so as to accept the directions, because the behavioral patterns or habits of employees need to be studied before you direct something, because there have been several studies indicated that people will accept the things only if the things are matching to their habitual patterns. That's why you have to make them ready so as to accept the directions given. The second one is face-to-face suggestions, or you can say direct communication. So as we have already discussed this point in directions or need for directions also, face-to-face suggestions or face-to-face orders are very important, which has to be followed while giving the orders. Next one we have is the orders should be made depersonalized. And they should be made integral part of the organizational objectives. Here depersonalized means it should not be a personal issue between manager and the subordinate. Here the orders should be given with respect to the organizational situation, and it should be integral part of the organization where you are going to achieve some goal. It should not be a fight between the manager and subordinate. In that way, you have to follow these three principles so as to give effective orders. The first one, you have to change the attitude of yourself, or you have to develop attitude of yourself in ordering the people in a proper way, or you have to change the employee's attitude. Both will be possible here. And then face-to-face suggestions are very important. Then orders should be made depersonalized and integrated with the organization's objectives. Okay, so these are the conditions or principles to be followed as indicated by Mary Parker Follett. Next we have is the conditions for effective orders. Chester Burner has lays down 4 conditions for effective orders. Sometimes these conditions are also called as the conditions for acceptable orders. This is Bernard, okay. So he has laid down 4 conditions for acceptable or effective orders. The first condition in this one is order should be clear and complete. It should be clear and complete. It should be communicated properly. Okay, that is what the meaning here. Second one, order should be compatible with organizations or organizational objectives. The third condition we have is orders should be compatible with individual's interest. And the fourth one is it should be operationally feasible. So if we are able to satisfy these four conditions, then the orders will be acceptable for every employee or every subordinate. The first one, as I have said, it should be clearly and completely communicated, and it should be compatible with the organizational objectives. And then we have order should be compatible with individual's interest, or you can say individual's objectives as well. So as indicated earlier, the harmony of objectives should be there between individual person and the organizational objectives. And the last one we have is order should be operationally feasible. You should not give an order which is not feasible for the particular time or particular situation. Okay, so these need to be followed when you are taking any or giving any orders. Okay, now the orders can be of different type, that is the orders can be given verbally or in the written form. Verbally and written form orders will depend on the situation, whether you are going to give it verbally or written form. The different situations wherein we can give the orders in the written form, we can write them as written form is better when matter or the subject is important. When more number of people are going to be affected with this order. Next, what you can see is when orders have lot of content or matter involved. When it is a long distance communication. So in these conditions we can give written orders, otherwise we will have to go for verbal orders only. What is the first condition? Subject is important. When there is a important subject, then you can go for a written order so that you can have a track of that one. Next, when more number of people or individuals are going to be affected, in that moment also you can go for the written orders. And the next one is when orders have lot of content involved, lot of matters need to be discussed or lot of details need to be given while giving the order, then you have to go for written orders. After that, long distance communication, obviously you cannot give verbally, there will not be any proof, that's why you have to give the orders in terms of written form only. Other way, you have to go for verbal orders. Okay, so this is all about the orders that is in the different types, and what are the conditions for acceptable orders, and what are the rules or the principles to be followed during giving orders. Now let us understand in what way the manager can able to have his orders executed by the different subordinates. So, how a manager can enforce his orders to be followed? He can follow any of the four methods listed over here. The first one is force. By force he can act and tell that these orders need to be followed, or he can go to paternalism. This paternalism means he can say that I am good for you all these days. If you are going to do this work, it will be helpful for me. That is, it is like I have favored you giving the job, and you have to do a favor by doing this job. So in that way he is going to indebit the employee so that he will do the work assigned or follow the order. In force he says that the work given should be done, otherwise the consequences will come. Next one is bargain. In bargain, you are going to have a order where the manager says that if you complete the particular work, then you are going to get the incentives, or you are going to get the particular hikes in the salary. So that is like a bargain thing, and by this way also he can order. And the next one is harmony of objectives. In this method, the manager is going to enforce through telling the subordinate that if you are going to work it out, or you are going to follow this order, then we will be going to satisfy the objectives of individuals as well as the objectives of the particular organization, and thereby we are going to achieve the goals which have been set already. Okay, in that way manager enforces his orders to be followed. Okay, so that's all about giving orders. That is the function of a direction function. So next we have is motivating or motivation. This is the second function of direction, where we are going to see how the people are going to be motivated. First let us understand what is this word means. It is derived from the Latin word movere, which means to move. In our particular concept, to move means to move the people to achieve some goal or to follow the orders. Whatever job we do, whatever the activity we do, there will be some motivation behind that or some motive behind that. That is the driving force of what we do. Correct? That's why motivating is the very basic function where all the things can be directed. If you are motivated, you are going to do the particular work or activity. That is what we are going to see in this concept. And here the motivation process starts with the needs, or you can say the unsatisfied needs, especially because needs might be satisfied needs or unsatisfied needs. The unsatisfied needs are the one which are the triggering point for doing something or doing some activity or doing a job. That's why the needs need to be understood, and this we'll see in the next concept. Before that, we'll see what is this motivation process, what are the different steps involved in motivation process. So let me draw the block diagram of motivation process. The motivation process starts with needs, the input for that will be incentives, that is, it might be positive or negative, and this leads to interpretation of goals according to one's perception, and this will decide the goals oriented behavior, and finally you either accomplish the goals or you will end up not accomplishing. When you accomplish the goals, you will reduce the needs. So this is the process of motivation or motivating. As you can see, needs are the very first step in the process of motivation, where the incentives, whether it might be positive or negative, they are going to add a value to the interpretation of goals according to one's perception. If it is positive, you may take it a positive goal. If it is negative, you may try to work less, or you may take the negative also in a positive way, such that I have to overcome these difficulties so as to achieve the goal. In that way also it is possible. So one interprets the goals according to the perception of these incentives and needs, and then based on the goals you will show the behavior, goal oriented behavior, or you go on doing a good work, and then you accomplish the goals and reduce the needs. Okay, needs might be several, it is not only one, there might be several needs. If one need is satisfied, you will go for the next level. In that way the motivation process will be going to complete, or it will going to continue. That's all about the motivation process. Now let us understand the different characteristics of this motivation, or the nature of motivation. Sometimes it is called as nature of motives also. Okay, the first nature is individuals differ in their motives. Second is sometimes individuals are unaware of their motives. Motives changes. Can write fourth one here. Motives are expressed differently. And the fifth one we have is motives are complex. And the sixth one is multiple motives makes it difficult in choosing goals for an individual. So the first characteristic of motives is individuals differ in their motives, because every person will have his own perception based on his situations. He will have his own motives. The motive for one person may be related to economical aspects, another person may be it is related to social aspects, another person it might be job security and safety, for another it might be just a esteem or prestigious thing which motivates to do some activity. In that way individuals will differ in their motives. Sometimes individuals are unaware of their motives. This is also possible, because some activities will keep on doing without knowing what is the motive behind it. It happens everywhere, and this is also one of the major characteristic of motives. Next we have motives changes. Depending on time and situation, motives changes, that we already know. And motives are expressed differently. Different people will express the motives differently. For example, if we consider the motive of a person is to have a secure job, if he takes positively, he will take up responsibilities and thereby he want to sustain in the environment. Some person take this motive as negative, that is to secure the job, he has the fear of failing and he is not ready to take the opportunity or responsibility, and thereby we can say motives are expressed differently for different people based on their perception situation. They are going to express it differently. The fifth one is motives are complex. Yes, motives are complex because every individual is not having a single motive. There will be multiple motives, and multiple motives are related to multiple concepts going on. So based on the different motives, different people or workers behave in a particular manner. So we cannot judge workers to behave in a particular situation based on only one motive. That's why the motives are complex in nature. And the sixth one we have is multiple motives make it difficult in choosing goals for an individual. Since as we know multiple motives are possible, it is not the single need or single motive which drives a person. There will be multiple things he will be aspiring for. That is, he wants economical needs or economical related aspects, security and social relationships. He wants to have secure his job. All these things will add up. That's why multiple motives will decide, or it will makes it difficult to choose the goals. Okay, so these are the nature or the characteristics of motives. In the next session, we will see the different theories related to motivation, that is Maslow's need hierarchy theory and Herzberg two-factor theory. Those theories we are going to discuss in the detail. Until then, I hope all of you will go through these concepts. Thank you.